Welcome to the Dyno! We've got fun and games, and we're gonna take you behind the scenes in how we handle our hunt for horsepower. This is going to be a very special episode of Engine Masters, kind of like the Brady Bunch Goes to Hawaii, but a different kind of vacation, because I'm going to do my best to put you in our shoes to see what it's like to go behind the scenes for a day at the dyno here at West Tech Performance Group in Mira Loma, California. What we're going to do is show you how you would show up with your engine prepared, why you would want to come to the dyno with your engine to begin with, how you hang it on the dyno. We're going to show you how the dyno works, look at how we break in an engine, how we tune it up, and of course, how to judge whether the engine is any good or not. All of that this time on Engine Masters. Now, let me tell you about this lovely engine that is going to be the victim of this episode. This is the COVID 350. You've probably seen it on my social media. You may have even seen it on an episode of Roadkill where we did sort of a working from home deal with me and Finnegan, and I assembled this out of parts that were literally left over in my garage, which I know looks really greedy, but this represents 30 years of hoarding parts. Let me tell you what it's all about. First of all, it's a 355 cubic inch small block Chevy, very standard stuff. It's just got a stock cast crank, H-beam rods, forged pistons. It is 11 1/4 to 1 compression, which makes it pretty good. And it allowed me to do things like install a big solid roller cam. It's a Comp Cam's off the shelf unit. The duration at 50 is 242, 248. I've got rocker arms on it with a 1.65 to 1 ratio for 600 lift, which makes it good because you can walk around going, I got 600 lift. Now, the cylinder heads you should recognize because they've been on that 383 small block that you've seen on a cajillion episodes of Engine Masters. They're the Blueprint Engines 210cc CNC ported heads. Up top, Holley 850 double pumper that just really stabbed my hand on that vent. That really hurt. And I've got an Edelbrock Super Victor intake manifold on it, MSD ignition. We've already got the dyno headers on this thing, and it is mounted to the dyno cart. And we've got the special flywheel installed, which I will show you once we get inside the room and take you behind the scenes on this dyno test. Let me get this thing out of here. One of the things you got to pay attention to is not knocking the engine off the cart, because right now it's not actually attached at the back. So first of all, why would you even want to dyno test your engine? Well, first of all, because it's really fun. I guess one of the big deals for me is if you have a brand new engine like this, you can break in your cam. If you've got a flat tappet cam, that's huge. But you can also make sure nothing's gonna break before you put it in the car. Leak checking is a really big thing. And of course, you can get a baseline tune-up for both your ignition timing and your carburetor or EFI. And of course, you get to walk away with the horsepower number and brag to all your friends that you have dyno proven power. When you bring your engine in, you want it to be as complete as possible. Once you get your engine here at the shop, it'll get mounted onto a rolling cart like this, which is super handy. You want to have motor mount brackets on it to hang it on there, and they'll install a flywheel that matches the balance to your engine. So if the dyno shop you're dealing with doesn't have that, if you've got, I don't know, a Ford FE or something that they're not commonly dyno testing, you want to make sure you've got that. They'll bolt on this drive plate that has a hub in it, like a clutch with springs, that's going to mount here to this spud that attaches to the dyno. And of course, there's a regular old bell housing, like a manual transmission bell housing, that's also used to couple it to the dyno. In our case here, you don't have to run a starter on the engine. There are twin starters under here that attach to the dyno itself, so we don't have to deal with matching that all up to a flex plate and wiring that every single time. But some dynos actually, you have to have a starter with them. I don't have a lot of experience with other types of dynos other than this, but there are some that do not require a bell housing or a flywheel, and they have more of sort of a drive shaft situation and different methods of mounting the engine to the cart. So you can ask those questions before you go to the dyno shop. So they've pre-leveled the thing, because one of the deals is it's got to go in this way, but it's also got to be leveled up and down, and it can't be like this. We used to fight with this a whole lot more. And Brulet's the only guy who sticks his arm in the bell housing and has the trust that nobody's gonna wiggle the engine and pinch his finger off.
As David was explaining kind of the rear of the drive system, the flywheel and all that, we've now slid it onto the input shaft, which is just not dissimilar to like an old Muncie 1 3/8 10 spline. What we have here is a water brake or an absorber, which basically is for lack of a better term, it's a variable speed torque converter. It's controlled with a servo on the bottom, which either holds or releases water to maintain engine RPM and load. What we're doing is measuring torque with what's called a strain gauge or a load cell, and basically what it is kind of an electronic rubber band which changes in millivolts. So it's actually calibrated, and then we actually measure torque. And between torque and RPM, we calculate horsepower. So there are observed channels and measured channels. Basically, this is the brain of the thing back here, this control box. We're monitoring fuel pressure and oil pressure, all of those things, but the meat of any engine dyno is really measuring torque, engine speed, which calculates to horsepower. All the other stuff is kind of things to look at the health of the engine or the potential of the engine.
So he's hooking up the oil pressure, I'm hooking up the fuel lines. You can see that we have both an A and a B fuel line here, and you'll often see Steve looking at the fuel flow on each bowl to sort of judge what's happening with the jetting in each end. So all of the water stuff that we deal with all the time, I never know what valves you're opening and closing and what the huge tank does outside and the heat exchanger and all that stuff.
Well, as far as the stuff I'm adjusting on the capacity valve and that sort of thing, it's really to kind of contour the absorber to the power output of the engine, because that electronic servo only has a certain amount of sweep. And so I'm basically increasing...
The servo being the dump, basically?
Yeah, the dump, the electronic dump that's controlled by the computer.
The releasing the water out of the torque converter, so to speak.
So what I'm doing with that capacity valve back there is kind of contouring the ability of the absorber for more or less torque, which is more or less water, because we want to keep that servo in a sweeping range for the RPM range we're running it. And so I basically reduce the water or increase the water for engine torque.
This is actually the Westex Super Custom Stainless Steel handmade water tank. It's got a radiator cap that goes here up on the top. And then this is a water-to-water heat exchanger. So there's tubes that run inside the thing and water that goes around the outside of it. And so you've got cool water from the giant tank, and then you've got water out of the engine. And it works like a water-to-water or an air-to-water intercooler, basically, except for it's water-to-water.
This is one of the fuel turbines. Basically what it is, it's a little paddle wheel inside of this housing, and it has an optical pickup. So as that paddle wheel spins, it's actually counting. And so as the fuel passes through and goes up to the B turbine, we're able to count the fuel in pounds per hour and actually ultimately calculate that into gallons if we want to. What we're able to do is we have an A turbine and a B turbine, which allows us to read the primary and secondary bowl of a single 4-barrel carburetor, or primaries and secondaries in, let's say, a tunnel ram carburetor. What that allows us to do is make sure that we're not rich on the front, lean on the back, or left and right with a tunnel ram, those sorts of things. It's just another piece of the equation for data that we can look at to help us tune.
Steve showed you about the fuel flow and how that's measured. Also, fuel pressure is internal to the dyno. Some of the instrumentation that we do that involves the engine, well, this is dyno. We deal with water temperature here. That's what this is reading. We've got oil pressure hooked up just like you normally would with your odometer gauge on your dash. It just connects to the dyno. We also have a wideband oxygen sensor here. Sometimes we'll run 8 of them in every single header tube so we can look at the air-fuel ratio cylinder to cylinder. On a standard deal like this, we'll just put 1 of them in a collector. It's obviously about 18 inches back from the opening so it doesn't get oxygen contaminated. And speaking of contamination, the other thing is if we have a brand new engine that's never run before, especially if it's a customer that Steve doesn't trust, like, you know, Dulcich or somebody like that, we'll not put the oxygen sensor in for initial fire up just so that it doesn't get wet with water, oil, overly rich mixture, any kind of disaster. This is run before and it's already broken in. So we will start with this all hooked up. I can never find the plugs once they're thrown over. That's why we need Troy. Watch this. Hey, Troy. See? Pork chop's good that way.
One of the other pieces of equipment that we frequently use, and we have actually in past episodes when we're trying to kind of figure out why an engine makes more or less horsepower and we're looking at airflow. Basically what this is, it's a little generator and it measures airflow down through the carburetor. And then again, it's calibrated to the electronics on the dyno, but it's got this aluminum honeycomb and a little fan there, and it actually, as air is moving through the carburetor, it spins the little fan. And again, it's calculated. We don't hardly ever, well, we did once, use this when we were running nitrous, and we don't any longer because this is really very fragile honeycomb to kind of direct the air and make sure that it's straight and the fan operates properly. But any sort of backfire or anything can damage this thing really easily. So this is really more like development sort of stuff, not necessarily having to run it on every engine every day.
Okay, Steve, before we fire this thing up, what are like the most common questions that you get from new customers or people who show up here for the first time?
I'll get emails that say, how much does it cost to dyno my engine? A little more information, please.
Okay.
You know, a lot of times things will come over the internet and it's very vague, and there's a lot more to it than that. I mean, I really want to talk to someone on the phone. I want to ask them about water pump and configuration and pulleys and whether it's EFI or carbureted.
Blown turbo, some crazy contraption with 2 blowers and 3 turbos.
E85 or gasoline, all the way down to the point of, if you're bringing your headers, have they recently been coated?
Right.
Or are they seasoned? Because does it have a flat tap? Does it have a roller? I mean, all of those things play one part to the other, so.
So on the header coating, if you break in the engine with a fresh set of coated headers, it bakes it off, right?
Now it's a bubbled coated header.
It completely ruins it. That's something I wouldn't have ever even considered for this,
Yeah, you have to season them, and you can't season them with a flat tap it very well, so. We'll use our headers first, break the camshaft in, then put their headers on after the camshaft's broke in to season their header, and then run it with their headers.
Do you recall ever getting this kind of care?
Oh, all the time. But I'm kind of curious, have you ever had someone come in so underprepared that you had to send them home, or?
It's worse than he ever has been.
I mean, the worst one I remember is I had a short block. Outside, when you came in, I was sitting on the curb porting the heads and had to get the thing tested that day.
Okay, so you want to walk us through what you would be doing for an initial break-in thing? You want to go start it and show what Troy's going to work on and et cetera?
Sure, absolutely.
Walk us through as if we're ignorant, because as you know,
well,
we're not.
Troy's out in the cell, which he normally is on startup, and we're going to check for any sort of fuel leaks initially. We're going to crank it for oil pressure before we start it. We're just going to check some real basic stuff. And then upon startup, he's going to do a walk around and inspection. He's got a heat gun in his hand, so he can go ahead and check and make sure we've got temperature in all 8 cylinders. He'll take a listen to the valve train, and then he'll go ahead and check timing for me. And we kind of have, we've been doing this long enough together, we've kind of got a hand signal program worked out, so we really don't have to talk to each other much.
Brule, being old that he is, he's hard at hearing, so we have to use hand signals. So what's going to happen is when Steve is in there and getting ready to fire it up, I will be ready with the temp gun and check the temperature of each cylinder and make sure they're all firing right.
This engine happens to have a solid roller camshaft, so my typical procedure would be to just start it up, make sure that we have base timing set. I'm going to warm it up to kind of test temperature, and then we're going to shut it off, and I'm going to go out and relash the valves after initial startup, just so I'm comfortable with that. Once we come back in, I'll run it through a break-in cycle, and then we'll start along our test procedure. So I can show you what some of that stuff looks like. And all we're doing right now is just letting it get up to some sort of reasonable operating temperature. It doesn't have to be 160 or 80. If it were a circle track engine, we would run it much warmer. This happens to be kind of a street and drag race engine, so we're going to actually run it in the 130-ish range. And so this is at about the point in time where I would just shut it off and go out and relash the valves just to make sure that we've got some temperature in it. They're all adjusted accurately. Okay, so we've got the valves lashed, and now I've come back into the console. One of the things that I think is interesting, it's a story I like to tell, is, you know, people say, well, why do I want to break it in, or how does that work by cycling the engine up and down and varying the RPM range? In the old days, somebody would tell you that you wanted to break it in by just going on a drive where it was kind of up and down hills and varying the throttle position. But I had an opportunity to look at a big block Chevrolet that someone had forgot to put an oil ring spacer in. It was a Stroker 496. And during the break-in cycle, I could see the engine smoke out of the passenger side header. And as the RPM increased, the smoke would go away. It would get to a little higher level, and it would smoke out the driver's side. So I was actually able to kind of visually see externally how the oil kind of fanned through the engine. So the whole idea was to keep the camshaft lubricated, to keep oil on the cylinder walls while they're seating, and to keep everything lubricated. So it was just kind of fun to be able to see what's actually happening inside the engine during the break-in process. So we'll go ahead and get it started up and run it through a break-in. Just gently bump it up to 3,100, and it's going to cycle it from 31 down to 27, back up to 31. We've run this engine before with a different carburetor. In the interim, we've changed carburetors because David's actually going to put this in a car, and this is the carburetor he'd like to run. Even just trying to bring it up to an RPM and load to break it in, the air-fuel ratio is so lean, we can't continue. And that's part of why you take things in small steps. We're gonna have to go out and address the carburetor issue a bit and upjet the primary circuit on the carburetor just to get the thing to cruise smoothly and to be able to run through the break-in process. This has a 72 jet in it. Typically I see 80 to 82 jets in these. I'm putting a 79 in it just to give it some fuel, and we'll I'm sure probably have to readjust some from there, but we just got to be able to make it run and not be so lean that it stumbles and runs hot.
Another thing that can make it lean like that is a really radical vacuum leak, which, by the way, on the dyno doesn't seem to matter at wide open throttle at all, but it'll affect like the drivability and the idle and stuff like that. So as soon as we ran out here, I started to look and see if the carburetor was missing any plugs. The one in the back was cracked, so is this one in the front. So that wasn't the problem, the jetting was the problem, but nonetheless, that's the type of thing that you can find out before you get the engine in the car.
Well, we got one full pull under our belt now. We ran it from 35 to 6,500. I can tell you that the engine's healthy. It's got a couple of little tune-up things that I think can be improved on, but before I go any further, since this thing belongs to David, and I always like Steve's opinion, I think I'm going to go out there and talk it over with those guys.
The best part of this is I think Dulcich is really going to like it.
I do like it already from what I've seen.
Oh,
Yeah.
you've been watching the data?
Oh, you bet I have.
I knew you'd appreciate it.
Yeah.
Let's have a look and see where we need to go. Really, the power is still on a little bit of a climb. We stopped at 6,500 RPM, and right there we're making 502.9 horsepower. So obviously that crests that 500 goal and only gets better from here. As far as torque, and we are looking at corrected numbers here, which Steve will explain in a minute, 442.7 at 4,800 RPM. So our spread, and we often look at this, the spread between the RPM at peak torque and the RPM at peak horsepower is 4,800 all the way up to 6,500. So that's an 1,800 RPM spread, which is good.
Yeah, it's really good.
Yeah.
What we typically see in LS stuff that's good.
Yeah. No, we really like to see that because it basically means the package is working.
Yeah.
It's not very what we would call peaky. Like if you saw the spread from 5,800 to 6,500, that's an engine that's only operating in that range, whereas this thing's fairly happy throughout the entire curve.
Yeah, it's a beautiful curve.
Yeah.
This is kind of almost an ideal situation when I look at an initial break-in and some testing. It's a little bit rich, not horrible.
So you say it's a little bit rich. We're looking at air-fuel ratio, which is the mixture of air and fuel as measured by the oxygen sensor in that tailpipe that I showed you, or in that header collector. And it starts out at 11.5 to 1 and ends up at about 12 to 1. We would call that rich because we're going to target this thing later at 12.5 to 1 to 12.7 to 1.
What I generally do is on a normally aspirated engine is my target is horsepower. Wherever it makes the best power is the right air-fuel ratio.
Okay,
And I will sometimes see that at 12.2 and I'll sometimes see it at 12.8.
Okay, fair
So
point.
we're just gonna let the engine tell us what it wants.
Let me ask you this. When we start doing our timing sweeps, do you ever see timing affect the air-fuel ratio?
Slightly,
Yeah.
not nearly as much as people think. I mean, they think as soon as you add timing, it's gonna get a whole bunch leaner. We might see it move a tenth or two, but I'm not gonna see big swings in air-fuel ratio.
Okay.
The other thing I like here is the oil pressure. It's got a really nice curve all the way up. And we were looking at that as we kept moving up in RPM, making sure all of those things were right.
So as far as the fuel mixture, we talked about air-fuel ratio. The other thing Steve looks at for drivability and just sort of the overall happiness of the carburetor is fuel flow in pounds per hour into the front and rear bowls individually. What are you seeing there?
Well, what can happen is the air-fuel ratio can look like it's in a good range, but the front of the engine could be extra lean and the back of the engine extra rich, but it averages out to appear to be okay. So with this, I'm verifying that it has equal fuel flow in the front and rear. In a perfect situation, you would have good drivability, good wide open throttle, and at wide open, those would be well balanced. That's a perfect situation. We get close. This thing looks really encouraging here. We're only a couple of pounds off. And we know it's rich, and we know it's rich at cruise, so we're going to be able to lean the whole carburetor out a little bit.
So tell me what we're going to do next.
2 and 2.
2 and 2. Yeah, back at Chuck Willery. I remember that. I'm thinking we take 3 and 3 out. You know, just something to get us closer. On this size carburetor, generally 4 jets out of the front and the rear will knock about a ratio out of it. So I don't want to get too greedy right away. Well, 2 is fine, 2 or 4. Get it into a range where I think the timing will actually make some effect, and then make that 1 jet change, then we'll do a timing change, then go back and finish it off with jet again. Yeah. And I think you got a package.
Okay, watch this. Have you noticed Dulcich hasn't had much camera time in this episode yet?
I know.
Yeah, so he should probably go change those jets.
Oh, wow, you're just putting me to work.
I know. I always find a way.
He's so benevolent. Well, as it turns out, the air-fuel ratio numbers appear to look like they're in a better spot, but it actually lost about 4 or 5 horsepower. So, like we had talked about earlier, is we kind of just let the engine tell us what it wants, and sometimes they want to be richer. So we're going to go back to the jetting, so it's very similar to what it was, richen it up just a little bit, and then go ahead and chase the timing.
The carb's fully dialed in now, and the next step is going to be taking a look at the timing. We had a base setting very conservatively at 32 degrees, so we're going to bump that up to 34 and then test it again and see if it picks up any power. If it picks up a lot, we may even go further to 36 until it stops giving us an improvement. So I'll just give the distributor a little twist, and then I'll give it a check with the timing light.
Now we're ready to look at some data. To review, we ended up first dialing in our fuel curve and then going to the ignition timing. So let's look at what we learned there.
So this is actually after changing the primary jet because it wouldn't even run to break it in.
Right, fair point.
So we added some fuel there. So we were a little closer than it may have been, but we couldn't run it the way it was. And so that's what we had there.
Okay, so let's compare that with what we ended up with our fuel curve. And I will say our jet changes on this thing were, after that initial step where it was way too lean, we were talking tiny. We never change 1 jet number at a time in a Holly, like for example, from 72 to 73, but we did that today, which was kind of dumb, but it worked.
Okay.
There you go. Big difference just from a couple of jet numbers right there. So that's one of the reasons why you want to come to the dyno. You've now got a baseline. I have found that when you take the engine off the dyno and put it in a car, you don't necessarily get the same results. It's not going to track the same air-fuel ratio numbers because of underhood heat, what you've got for an air cleaner,
exhaust,
scoop, exhaust. Yeah, when you put an exhaust system on it, it tends to like richen it up, all those things. But it gives you a point to start from.
Yeah, and it depends on the application too. I mean, when we do some of the drag boat stuff, it comes off the dyno, goes in, and never gets touched, and they're pretty much spot on. But again, they have the same fresh air, open headers. Right. It's a much more similar situation. Mm-hmm. So anytime you change other components, mufflers, exhaust system under the hood temp, air filters, air cleaners, that type of thing, it's going to change some of the results.
So now let's just look at our best curve after we adjusted the fuel and compare that with the timing that we were messing around with. And we did end up changing the timing from an observed 30 degrees to 32 to 35 and even 36. And it was really insensitive above 32 degrees. At 30 degrees, man, it threw away power. I've never seen 2 degrees make that kind of a change. As a matter of fact, I think because Troy initially set it up and then you were looking at it, I think it was a different parallax on the light and comparing the mark in a different place.
I suspect that we probably were looking at it a little differently because I got it right and Troy did his best. Right?
Well, that's one reason why often we have a rule here. If it's your engine, you set the timing so that you can repeat it in the car. We didn't do that this time. Yeah. Although, you know, my crew chief here probably will be dealing with that engine if it ever gets in the car, so we're good. But anyway, we found the optimal timing for it, which is an indicated 34.
Right.
Okay, and how did that look? Not a whole lot different. As a matter of fact, it's down just a little bit right here, just from variance from test to test. But
Freiberger, I have to confess, I honestly think that's the difference between 34 and 35 degrees.
Yeah,
so 1 degree difference. And it's virtually an overlay. That's within dyno variation, if you ask me.
Which is really another point, I think. If you go to a dyno shop and they run the thing a few times and they can't overlay a curve like this, there's a problem going on. That's one of the things that makes Steve great is he's like paying attention to not just the coolant temperature, but in his head, he's also thinking about the combustion chamber temperature, because you can have the same coolant temperature whether you just rushed a bunch of water into the engine and the chambers are still hot, or whether the thing's actually settled. And his dyno brain has got that sort of dialed in.
Well, it just kind of turns into muscle memory after this long, but you've seen me do it. Let the engine idle for a while so the combustion chamber temperature drops, even though the water temperature still reads the same. The combustion chamber temperature is lower, and it'll make more power.
Yeah.
So you can play little games like that, and we try really hard not to, because we want every test to be a comparison. We don't want to just have random numbers. I love the engine dyno because it's so much easier to do that with the equipment we have than it is on a chassis dyno when you have even more variations.
And finally, the punchline we all want to know when we go to the dyno, which is what is our peak power numbers? And the COVID 350 barely breaks into that 500 that everyone wants to see. It's 501.9 horsepower at 6,500 RPM. And by the way, in previous tests, we ran this thing all the way out to 7, and it carries very nicely. And once again, the spread between peak torque and peak horsepower is huge. At 4,700 RPM, we made 447.7 pound-feet of torque. So now, you may heap the praise. Now, I understand these days 500 horsepower is no big deal, but what we do to look at an engine and decide if it's good or bad is more than just the peak power number, because a 500 horsepower 540 big block Chevy is worthless. A 500 horsepower 355 Chevy on pump gas is pretty good. So let's talk about how we decide that.
Well, I mean, for me, the number to look at is always specific torque, and that's because the torque that you produce per cubic inch just falls in a narrow range, and you can judge if you're on the upper end of that range, man, you're doing pretty good. If you're on the lower end, then not so much. So where are you at, Freiberger?
So what he's talking about is pound-feet of torque per cubic inch, specific output. It is 1.26 on this engine.
Okay, that's a very respectable number for a pump gas engine, for sure. Wouldn't you think, Brule?
No, absolutely. Kind of the number I use in my head a lot, and because I have seen a lot of engines kind of end up there that were good. And on an average, I would say some of the best pump gas stuff that's a true street engine, you know, 10 1/4, 10 1/2 to 1 with a really good cylinder head and a hydraulic roller camshaft, they end up, I mean, kind of a target for me is 1.25.
Okay.
Yeah. I see a lot of iron-headed stuff down at 1.15, some pretty decent stuff, 1.2. So at 1.26, That's a really good number for pump
and
gas.
the specific horsepower output, horsepower per cubic inch, is 1.41. Also pretty good for something like this.
Absolutely.
All right, well, that was a lot of really technical gobbledygook, but I hope you realize on every episode how much fun we have going through it and sort of nitpicking it and discovering why power is great and what engines are good and what engines are bad. And on that note, I'm not satisfied yet with you guys having told me that this is a great engine. I'd like a little bit more.
Okay.
You could just sort of feed it in. No, it's not
Very
that
good.
awesome, but it actually came out pretty good. It's a fairly good street 355.
There's no question it turned out really well.
I can remember being in high school or my earlier years, you didn't go to the dyno, you know. You couldn't afford it at the time. There weren't that many dynos around, as a matter of fact. But if you're an engine geek and you want to improve your game, the dyno is where you do it, because you have all this data. You could get all that feedback. Oh, is that working? Is that making it better or worse? You get dyno brain brulee and your buddies there. And, you know, like the dyno is probably one of my favorite things. So.
Well, it is me too. You just made it sound so fun.
Oh,
All we
it is.
really need is beer. Can we work that out next time?
There's some in the fridge right
Oh, that'd
now.
be fantastic.
I'm
All
on my
right,
way.
we're out for that. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time on Engine Masters. Up top, Holley 850 double pumper that just really stabbed my hand hard on that vent. That really hurt. Look, yeah.
It needs mechanical 8-stack.
Who's speaking here? If I were to call him and go, hey, Brule, on Engine Masters, I want to run stack EFI on this thing.
On a
he
pill.
would immediately be like rubbing his head.
Well, here's my thing.
What's
okay?
our schedule? That's
What's
what
our
I'd say.
schedule? This time on Engine Masters, the power of Lobach versus high performance ignition. I know you think you're watching the wrong show, because yes, that is a big block Ford, the very first 385 series engine to appear on Engine Masters, because so many people have been asking for it. This is in fact about a 20-year-old Ford Motorsport crate engine. It's a 514. These things in a stock block will take huge strokes, like 557 cubic inches. They're really great. This crate engine has the Super Cobra Jet heads, and the only deviation from stock on this thing is the Comp Cam solid roller camshaft. It's an XE286R, and it does have an Edelbrock Victor intake manifold. So this thing is stout. It's good for like 650 pound-feet, 625 horsepower, something like that. And this is another thing that the audience has demanded over and over and over, and that I've resisted. It is a test of ignitions. Here's how it's gonna work. First of all, I have loaded this thing right now with the worst possible ignition system I could devise. It's got a cheapy parts store single point distributor in it. The spark plug wires are a combination of stuff from Dulcich's backyard and from Brule's old 327. They're like original GM wires. And we're gonna run it with a clapped out old coil to begin with, the worst that you can get. And then we're sort of gonna let the engine tell us where we progress from there. Ultimately, we plan to end up with full electronic ignition and an MSD box and a great coil, everything that you asked for. So we're gonna roll it into the dyno now and see how badly it misfires with all of this junk on it, and then slowly keep throwing better and better parts at it to see if it makes a difference at all.
So probably only the old guys are going to remember this. This is a tachometer, volt-ohm dwell meter. I think I bought this in 1971 or 2. It was actually in an era where I got the original instructions, and there's actually a supplement to this for electronic ignitions. They were so new then, but we have a chance to use it on this. So we're going to check the dwell. Should be 28 to 32. Steve's going to crank it. We can see it right here.
So the dwell's basically telling you how long the points are closed.
Yes, and how long the coil has a chance to recharge, and then when the points open up, then it discharges the coil.
Yeah, and it's a measurement of degrees. Okay, you want me to hit it?
Yeah. Yeah, so on the 8-cylinder scale, dwell time on a V8 should be 28 to 32 degrees of dwell, and this is right at 30, so we're spot on the money.
You said you bought that in 1971?
Man, in the early 70s.
So you were like 3?
I wish.
So did you write down that dwell number with your quill and parchment, or do you just go ahead and chisel it right into the rock?
Lasts longer with the rock.
Right. All right, this is gonna be one of those episodes I have to apologize to you guys for.
Why?
I didn't want to do it. Did you? No. Did you?
Yeah.
No, but the audience forced it. They kept on asking, I want to see ignition make power. And so to do that, I had to back this thing up all the way to the point where I hope that it just falls on its face.
There's a good chance. I mean, with the stuff that we've got on there now.
Those plugs are wasted. The wires are junk. It's a leftover coil from the vineyard. Yeah.
It's out of my 67 Bonneville. I think it might be original.
Okay, so we're gonna fire up this 514 cubic inch Ford, big block Ford, finally. And I think we're gonna have a misfire problem.
We might.
We just might.
Junk.
All right.
Did you see that?
That's the worst.
I've never seen that.
I don't know if we're gonna be able to run it at all. That was the worst thing I've ever seen on Engine Masters, and you know,
I had to take a roll back out of that one and give it a nice slow check again because I've never seen one shake like that on the dyno.
well, and explain that. Why was it that big of a disaster on load-in, but then you actually were able to give it load and sweep up to a point where it fell apart again?
Well, I think I let whatever was misfiring, the bad spark plug or whatever was in there, kind of catch up and start firing and roll in slowly. When I gave it, accelerated pretty quickly. I think the additional fuel caused it to misfire, and then it just went to,
Oh, right.
you know, so I had to stop. I'll throw more boost at your junk, but I'm not throwing ours up like that.
So what just happened there is the worst misfire in the history of the show. And so let's look at just how bad the power curve is when you do something like that. Wow. It's amazing it still made 646.9 pound-feet of torque and 621 horsepower, but it's a disaster. Look how once it starts to misfire up the top end, it's just all over.
And look at all this. I mean, it took that long to kind of get firing again, I think.
But then once it ran, look at the tabletop torque curve.
Yeah, I mean, that's a lot of power at 5,000 RPM for something that's on the verge of misfiring. And well, it is in this area.
That's a disaster.
I would say the ignition system right now is barely adequate.
I would say that too.
Right?
The question
barely
is,
functioning.
we know that we've preloaded it with doo-doo. What do we change first?
Those spark plug wires are collector items off of 62, 283.
The collector's items, huh?
Date code correct, right?
Yeah, they are. So is that your vote?
That's my vote, is plug wires.
Okay, I got an $18 set of the worst possible plug wires I could buy at Pep Boys. So you want to install that?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Okay, first up,
That'd be
brand new
better.
cheapy spark plug wires. These are my $18 spark plug wires that I purchased at Pep Boys only yesterday. So these are not like Trick high performance wires. These are what we used to call rag core when I worked at Jacobs Electronics. They are not a spiral metal core. They have like a carbon impregnated, I don't know, fabric in them. And they don't last that long and they're super cheap, but I have a feeling they're gonna solve quite a bit of our misfire problem. I'll put them there, go get my mask, and by the time I come back, hopefully those guys will have installed them. Want me to just go get you guys a beer or something?
My side's all done. We're ready.
Wrap that up. We're about to look at the data. Basically, the first time we ran it, it was a disaster. We put spark plug wires on it. We improved a lot of low-end power, but we're having trouble keeping the coolant temperature consistent because of the mechanical water pump, so we're gonna have to run it hotter than normal. So we've now re-baselined it at the hotter temperature. This will be the baseline that we will judge the rest of the tests in the episode from. Let's look how different it is, actually. Yeah, that's the difference between hot water temperature and cold water temperature. Obviously, cooler is the red line, making more power. Hotter is the black line, making less power. The black line's our new baseline. You can see that we solved the low-end misfire problem. We're still having a disaster up at the top end. Let me give you our new baseline power numbers. So what's really interesting now is that our torque peak is 635.1 pound-feet. The curve is just so flat that it's all the way out there at like 48 or 4,900 RPM, really high, and very close to the horsepower peak of 611.7 horsepower, which is happening right at the point where the thing falls apart and is having a big misfire problem. So the power points here, like the RPM at the peak, is sort of misleading information because of the misfire problem and because of the shape of this super flat torque curve.
Yeah, we would typically expect to see peak power happen 1,000, 1,200, 1,300 RPM after peak torque, and that's not happening. It's only about 300 right now, so we have a chance when we fix that up.
I feel obligated as our next fix to do spark plugs because we know they're so fouled.
Yeah, they're fouled.
I know you don't think it's spark plugs creating the problem, and I'll buy that, but I feel...
You can read my mind,
we're
Freiberger.
morally obligated to change the spark plugs.
We want to have good parts in here so, you know, we can rule that out of it completely and then see if upgraded components are going to help this thing with the ignition.
All right, let me grab some new plugs. Basically, these days on something like this, I'll look at the plug, and if a gap is there, it's fine. If you have a turbo or a heavy boost deal these days, you definitely want to close the stuff down to like, 22, 25, sometimes less. Okay. Oh, these wires don't like to clip on. There you go. All right, we changed our plugs. They weren't as dirty as I hoped. They cleaned up in that engine, but now we have a brand new set of cheap, made in China, Autolite spark plugs in there.
That's gonna be big power, bro!
Let's go.
There's that little smirk, Brule.
From one run to the next, and nothing else changed but the plugs. So
even though at the top end, we think it's point float, right? Maybe the point spring is getting worse.
From one run to the next?
Okay, I don't know. So the red line is actually our test with the old dirty spark plugs, and the black line is with our new Autolites. And it's a little bit down overall.
But keep in mind, our old dirty plugs were not
NGKs,
really,
yeah.
They were a higher quality plug, and after we ran the engine a few times, they cleaned up. So they really weren't old and dirty anymore by the time we established this baseline.
Yeah, it's a little up here, down there, the same there, down there. And this is when we actually could hear the misfire was worse.
Yeah.
Is in this area. And like you say, it could be that we're dealing with points, the points getting weaker as we go, or spark plug.
Or coil.
Should we change the coil before we mess with the points?
Sure.
Yeah, okay. I guess we might as well.
That was
right?
like a standoff to see who would get up and go change the coil, right?
That's what that was.
Well, I know.
Go ahead.
I guess I'll take the lead.
So
take the
your
point.
idea, he gets to
Your
go.
agreement is wrenching. It's perfect.
This is an MSD blaster coil. MSD is an ignition company that make quite a few high-performance ignition systems of various levels for race engines and high-performance street. I find that this unit very good with production-style ignition system, like a points here or some external coil factory electronic ignition systems. And we'll see if it makes any improvement. I don't have much faith that it's going to improve our high RPM misfire. I think that's occurring here in the distributor, but we will be getting a hotter spark with this coil.
We should probably look at curves, but I think at this point we can say nothing we've done has made any difference whatsoever. It's still a mess.
No, it comes down to the distributor, which we kind of suspected.
Yeah, and we can be confident that it's not the other parts in the ignition system that's causing the misfire.
Yeah.
So
what we've really showed everyone is that we don't know how to diagnose a problem. We just are parts changers.
Yeah.
even though we said from the get-go that the distributor is probably floating the points.
Here's what's really going on right now. Throughout this testing, at the very high end, you've heard this engine misfiring horribly. And from the very first time it did that, both of these guys claimed the points are floating, which means the points inside the distributor are what open and close in order to send spark to each cylinder, and they ride on an 8-lobed little camshaft in there. And if the spring that holds them closed is not working properly, basically they'll float like a valve spring. They'll lose control and it'll send spark at the wrong time. And that's probably what's going on here. And so we need to fix that before we keep our testing going on. So let's admit that for whatever reason, the points are junk at this point. I think the other problem that we have is that we know that the timing curve in this points distributor is slow.
It's a little lazy.
We looked at it with a gun, and you can see that all of the timing lead is not in until 4,500 RPM. So while normally we don't worry about an ignition timing curve on the dyno at all, because typically performance curve would have all of the ignition lead in by 3,000 RPM, this one is slow enough that it's not all in until 4,500 RPM. So if we make a distributor change, we're going to see a difference in the power curve just from the ignition timing.
Yeah, potentially at the bottom, but I mean, these distributors are not easy to get to change, the curve or to even get to the springs so it comes in faster. I think it's fair to say that this distributor was designed for some sort of Ford-powered motorhome or pickup truck, and that's what you want there is, the curve to come in late at 4,500.
So basically what he just said is, we're going to make two changes at once, which is switch to electronic ignition, and it's going to change the timing curve at the same time. So we're going to expect to see a little bit of a different shape of the power curve down below 4,500 RPM. Anything above that, we're going to credit towards not having ignition points, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so we're going to go with electronic ignition. Are you guys down with putting in an MSD distributor and trying to fire it with a Chrysler box so that we don't have an MSD multi-strike box on it?
I think those Chrysler boxes are pretty good, actually.
Okay. So electronic ignition, here we come. All right, out with the points distributor. The MSD distributor is going to have different plug connections here. We might end up having to change wires at the same time. It'll be kind of a big swap. We're going to change the timing and the triggering method and the spark plug wires all at the same time. Scientific testing, out the door.
Here's a quick rundown on the Mopar electronic ignition control box we're going to run. We're using that instead of the MSD because the MSD is a multi-strike box. In other words, you get more than one spark at low RPM especially. And we just want a conventional electronic ignition control. And we'll have this thing wired up and running in no time flat.
We made it Ford tough with Mopar stuff.
I'm happy again because it works.
I know. I was done with that misfiring.
Yeah, me too. I was just getting to the point where it was just, you can only take that so long.
What kind of power are we making now? Wow. Okay, we finally have an engine here. We made 636.9 pound-feet of torque and 626.4 horsepower. We're obviously not having the problem with misfire clear up at the top end.
Finally.
Can we compare this with the points curve just to see what was going on down here?
Boom.
Wow. Interesting. So black lines are with the electronic ignition and red is with the points. What's weirding me out is that we're not seeing any difference here due to the ignition timing curve. So I guess ultimately the deal with the timing curve is that it wasn't that different, and I thought it was. But the other lesson here is, wow, junk wires, fouled plugs, points distributor, ancient coil, made basically no difference below 4,000 RPM.
Yeah, I mean, if it's firing and it's on time and it's getting there, you don't see a lot of change.
But all the difference is going to be in, I think, cold start, longevity of all the components, you know, not having to tune it up as much. What I'm saying is the points versus the modern parts that we just put on, there's still benefits to it. It's just we're not seeing it in this test.
Oh yeah, there's no comparison. I mean, you know, there's a reason that all of that stuff evolved way back when.
I think now we're ready to make big power.
How are we going to do that, Freiberger? What's left?
We're going to go get the guaranteed performance spark plugs.
Ooh.
Okay.
Okie dokie. So next thing I want to do before we actually put an MSD multi-strike box on it is try some of the spark plugs that are advertised to make more power.
Okay, I'll get some changing plugs.
Okay, hold everything. I told you that we were going to change spark plugs and test those. So many times on Engine Masters off camera, we'll do a bunch of testing that you don't see. And it's not that we're testing new stuff that you're missing out on. It's that we are rebaselining and we're just looking at things and looking at all our temperatures to make sure that we're being fair to the product that we're testing and that our data is accurate. So in doing that, we found out that this ignition box is junk. So we set this thing back to our initial baseline and we were testing this box, and every time we made a pull, the power was just coming down and down and down to the point where it finally had a misfire at the top end. Now, Steve and I have seen that these Chrysler boxes are notoriously unreliable that way. So we ran to Napa and we bought their brand of Chrome box here and we ran it and poof, problem solved. And so we're gonna run outside right now and I'm gonna show you some of those dyno curves that show how the orange box was falling apart and how the chrome box there recovered it. And after that, we're gonna put the MSD box on it and see if that makes even more power. Okay guys, I told everybody what happened. Junk. So check it out. These lines are both with this orange Mopar box right here. The black line was earlier in the day. And then as we started testing those plugs and then rebaselining them and everything, it was getting worse and worse. You can see at the big end, it started to misfire right there. And Steve just pulled out of it because he's tired of watching this big block Ford shake his dyno apart and backfire and stuff. But it got that bad. And then we put that new Napa box on it and fixed. Can you show people that?
Wow.
Wow. Okay, so to be clear, the black line here is the best case scenario with the orange box. The blue line is when the orange box started to fall apart. The red line is that new silver colored Napa box. That's a big difference from two items that look exactly the same, and that if you hadn't hit that misfire up there in the car, you would never know the difference. And I think the only real lesson here is that this stuff is inconsistent and unreliable.
It's completely Russian roulette. You get a good one and you really want to hang on to it when you're running.
I know. So I guess the last step is that we're going to put an actual MSD multi-strike box on it and see if it solves that and makes more power. Is it a digital 6A? What are we going to run?
It's a digital 6A. 6AL2.
6AL2.
The actual designation.
Yeah, so pretty standard stuff that a lot of these guys would have on their car.
Yeah.
MSD, here we come. Okay. How are we going to make this happen? Just unplug junk and replug junk?
This is the simplest thing you've ever seen.
That's it?
Plug that in, and I will plug that in.
Oh, we're not using this coil anymore
We
either.
are MSD'd.
So which coil are we actually running off of? That little E-coil guy. Okay. So just like that, we changed to that MSD digital 6AL2 up there and also the MSD little epoxy coil. We're no longer running the blaster. This better work because I'm at my limit of stuff not working. What a relief. So sick and tired of messing around with things that spark. Our final numbers on our 514 big block Ford are 648.2 pound-feet of torque. Look at that monster. I mean, from 3,700 all the way up. That's a beast. And our peak horsepower, 633.2, which we haven't seen so far today. And look how it ran all the way out to 6,500 RPM. And I didn't even hear it beginning to break up before.
I just wanted to prove a point when I did that. It's like run it another 500. It's not going to misfire. It's going to be good.
Yep. Okay, what should we compare this to? I don't think it's fair to compare to the first test when we just had radical misfire with those spark plug wires.
No, not at all.
But let's go down to the good Autolite spark plugs, the $18 spark plug wires, and the points ignition, just to see how far we've come. That will be a comparison of brand new good parts to brand new good parts.
Right.
Just brand new junk good parts to brand new good parts.
This would be the wires and the points ignition with the original coil.
Let's see. Wow, that's a big deal right there.
It just shut off.
Yeah.
Basically.
Yeah, I remember that. It was jumping off the dyno. I hated it.
Wow. I mean, not only the RPM carry radically farther, but this is significant. What's the difference in this data point and that data point power-wise? From 628 pound-feet to 647.5. 20 pound-feet.
You'll feel that
just
in the car.
from ignition, for sure. And, you know, up to here, if you just listened to the thing or drove it up there, you'd go, this car's fine, runs good, right?
Absolutely. And then, yeah, I mean, you can see the dips and the drop-offs and the misfires
And the frustration just trying to hunt it down because you're thinking, is it my distributor? Is it my control unit?
it
Are my
valve float?
points? Oh, yeah, it could be
Yeah.
valve springs. Maybe my carburetor is messed up.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, you hear guys all the time, they'll text you on social media, can you help me troubleshoot this thing? It falls apart at 4,000 RPM. I'm like, well, it's a smorgasbord of dilemmas, but there you go. That's a big difference. That's a big, big deal.
so do ignitions make a difference?
At the beginning of today, I would have told you no. Like he kept on saying, if it sparks and fires it can't get any better.
well, I can tell you this.
Let's
You could
hear it.
take any one of these ignition systems. You could take the Chrysler one, and you might have that great chrome or gold box from Mopar back in the 1980s that was really super high quality, race quality stuff, and dial in that ignition system and make it your life's work, and you can get a darn functional ignition. And you can do that with points too, to an extent. But
Or
or you just save yourself all that headache and get good stuff right from the get-go and make Brule happy, right?
You know,
Look at that
it's just-
grin.
that kind of grief is just not worth $500 or $600 when you can get a distributor, a box, and wires for all of that. It's just, I mean, it's just too frustrating.
Okay, Brule, I've got good news for you. We have another episode we gotta do tonight, and you'll see that next time. Meanwhile, Dulcich and I are gonna go wrap this up. Well, Dulcich, I believe that you and the audience have witnessed the exact moment that I can no longer be a points-loving troglodyte.
Oh, no.
It's over. But cannot be overstated how great the big block Ford was. I mean, 650 pound-feet forever.
Freiberger, I think I'm in love with the big block Ford.
With electronic ignition.
Oh, yeah.
It's a landmark moment, ladies and gentlemen. Dulcich becomes an actual, somewhat modern ignition guy, you know, stuff that was invented in 1974, and a big block Ford guy. Pretty good. Life-altering experiences on every episode of Engine Masters.
That's the beauty of an analog device. You know, if that was digital or had a touch screen, it would have been in a landfill a long time ago. But that has analog knobs and a gauge. So it can sit in your toolbox for 25 years, right, Steve-O?
No, this thing is like 45 years old.
That's
this
awesome.
is pretty cool. Isn't it cool?
Yeah, my brother got me one for my birthday. He found it brand new on eBay.
Yeah. So yours is a collector's item. Mine's a tool in use.
Oh, I'll use mine already.
Have any idea how critical a header extension is to horsepower? Well, this time on Engine Masters, you are gonna find out. Ah, the COVID 350 is back. I love it. You love it. And we will use it this time to show you the power of header collector extensions. So this is the part that bolts to the back of your exhaust header, and this one's roughly 18 inches long. I will tell you there's a lot of power to be had or lost with the correct length header extension. So we're gonna be testing a bunch of that. I'm gonna do it on some exhaust headers that are 1 5/8, probably too small for this engine, and we're also gonna do it on some 1 3/4 inch headers, because I wanna see, does that perfect length change depending on the size of the header tube and whether the header is optimal for the engine or not. So, a whole lot of exhaust tech coming your way. Now, if you haven't seen it before, let me tell you what this engine is all about. We call it the COVID 350 because I built it during the lockdown here in California using parts that were left over in my garage. It is your standard small block Chevy. It is a 355 cubic inch small block Chevy, stock stroke, 30 thousandths overbore. The short block includes stock cast crank, 2-bolt mains, H-beam rods, forged pistons. It has 11 1/4 to 1 compression, which is what makes it great. It's got a big cam in it, a comp solid roller, 242, 248 at 50. With the rockers on here, it's got 600 lift. It has a Holley 850 carb. It has an Edelbrock Super Victor intake manifold and a Trick Moroso oil pan. Now, in the past, this has made as much as 500 horsepower, but I guarantee you we will be killing that power with this tiny set of headers on here, which we're gonna run first before we go into some collector length adjustments to either make or break some horsepower. This thing used to make 447 pound-feet and 500 horsepower.
You think it will now?
No.
Neither do I. But you might be right.
Well, it's gonna be bad. What if it's good? So here's the good news, bad news. The good news is our old configuration making 500 horsepower, 447 pound-feet, and then the red lines here are the smaller header with no collector extension whatsoever. So our power peaks with the small header and no collector are actually 442.6 pound-feet of torque at 5,000 RPM, and we made 485.9 horsepower at 6,600. I'm interested about how it meets in the middle. I thought that it would be way more worse at the bottom than at the top.
Well, the difference in peak torque's not that much if you look at it. And,
yeah, right there.
Yeah, and that's right where they get the closest. But right at the bottom of the pull, like out of the hole on drag strip kind of application, I bet you there's 50 foot-pounds there or more.
Yeah, at 4,000 RPM, what's the difference?
40 pound-feet.
Yeah, 40 pound-feet right at the hit. Yeah, so that's a disaster. Yeah, so next step, let's bolt a 3-inch collector extension on it that's about this long. Troy made me a custom one, because normally they come 18 inches.
Yeah, it's kind
and
of standard.
So, who knows? All right,
let's try it.
Let's go. Here we go. When you go to the drag strip, often it's cool to like uncork your headers, and people will do it just by disconnecting the flange right at the end of the header. What you really want is a collector extension. As we'll see, it should add a bunch of low-end power. They normally come in an 18-inch length, which is what I have here from Summit Racing. It's a pretty cheap unit. We've tacked on another 12 inches to it just so that we can see what it's going to do, so that we can progressively chop off length and see what makes the best power. So this is going to be a real simple bolt-on. It's right there at the flange.
This is our wideband oxygen sensor, and on that last run it actually indicated that the air-fuel ratio was maybe a little bit lean, but it really was just because this is sitting right at the end of the collector and contaminated with fresh air. You really want to have this moved up a minimum of 12 inches from the exit point, just to try and keep fresh air from contaminating it and giving you a false reading.
Here's what's next. There's an old Hot Rodder's tale that says, if you paint a line of spray paint on your collector extension and you look at where it burns off, you cut it right there, and that's the optimum length. But we're not gonna go directly to that mark. We're gonna progressively hack this thing down and see what's best. Well, the 30-inch collector extension would appear to have made this a whole new motor, but we haven't really looked at the data yet. Oh, snap.
Yeah.
Okay, this is why you run collector extensions. Look at the difference in torque down here. The black line is going to be what we just did with the collector extension. Red line is a no collector extension at all, and that is a lot of meat of torque. It actually, you know, did better up at the top in a certain range also. The whoop-de-doo is strange.
Yeah, it's that whole wave tuning and what it does in different spots.
But it really pumped it up right around peak horsepower.
Oh,
Yeah.
right there, yeah.
Yeah, right up in here.
So we've been talking a lot about the shapes of the curve, which once again, I always try and reinforce, they tell a much better story than the peak numbers. But the peak numbers are 441.6 pound-feet of torque at 5,100 RPM and 495.5 horsepower at 6,400 RPM. That's with the collector extensions. Let's go have a look at our painted stripe, see what it's telling us.
Oh, it'll tell us exactly where we need to cut. Maybe not now.
I'm going to ignore it. Well, let's go in there and have a look.
Yeah.
Let me get my tape measure. What do you think of my paint stripe, Steve?
Well, I mean, there's still a lot of it there, Freiberger.
But I like the way you can actually tell it's missing here clearly, and then it's kind of baked and it gets less and less and less.
Oh, yeah.
So this basically 5 inches back, let's say, but we're going to ignore that right now, and we're going to cut 6 inches off the back of this thing. There we go. Here we go, now 24-inch collector length extension in black and our old 30-inchers in red. You can see that we lost just a tiny, tiny little bit down here, gained here, and otherwise it's a wash. Right now we still believe that either 24 or 30 is better than no collector extension at all.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah,
I know this is going to be hard for you, Steve, but we're going to take another 6 inches.
What?
Not even sure what that means.
I didn't get it either.
Next up, 18 inches. Every time we cut the collector extension shorter, we're losing low-end torque. It trades places a little bit throughout the curve, and then up top, the shorter one keeps making just a hair more horsepower, just a hair. So I guess we go another 6 inches, huh?
Absolutely.
All right. Now we've got these at 12 inches overall, but look at my spray paint story here. It's actually creeping that way. Remember when I first started, it was at 5 inches, and it's now basically at 8. So the question is, how reliable is that? And also, I think you can already see that the trend of the paint burn is not working out well. Let's go dyno test it with 12-inch extensions. Loser. Huh. Black lines are 12-inch extensions, red lines are 18. You can see the trend. We just continue to lose more and more bottom end. In fact, this is the ugliest move we've made yet, in my opinion. So you're gonna go whack another 6?
Yeah.
Or paint stripe.
You can hold the gloves for the paint stripe.
Okay, I'll do that.
All right, we're gonna go to the paint stripe. Mr. Brule says our new Power Peaks are 441.7 pound-feet of torque at 5,000 RPM, 488.8 horsepower is at 6,600. So you're going to compare the 8-inch extension to
The 12.
the 12. And it just continues to plummet. Look at that garbage.
Jeez.
You know what? At least it tells you the trend is all the same direction. The collector length extensions affect torque at below peak. Not so much at the top end. But the other thing is, notice how each time we shorten it, the fail moves higher and higher upstream. Did you notice that?
Yep.
You really have to look at these curves and decide where you want to kill your torque. That's kind of your only
all
choice.
application.
Yeah, you're not making more horsepower at any point. So really it comes down to how much bottom end torque do you want to make or kill. So what I've learned so far is you're better to err on the side of too long of a collector than too short. We're gonna look at best to worst. This is 24 inches to 8 inches, and look at that. Once again, like I said, top end, really above 4,500, it doesn't matter. It does a tiny bit, but not, I mean, that doesn't alter your life. This does. Well, now the question is, when we put the 1 3/4 inch chassis headers on this thing, are they better than the 1 5/8? And is the answer about collector length the same? I know that the collector is going to be better, but is the length going to end up being the same?
I see what the question is, whether it's still the 24,
right,
or whether it turns into an 18 or a 12 or something like that on a larger tube.
Exactly.
So, one way to find out.
So now we're gonna go on both the 1 5/8 headers and install the 1 3/4 larger ones, and I guess we'll run them first with open, no extensions on them as well.
Just the way we did this.
All right, let's swap it out. Here's the new hotness. So the headers on this thing have tube diameters of 1 5/8 inches, and these are 1 3/4. So the higher the RPM, the larger the displacement, the more power you're making, the more you tend to like a larger header tube diameter. The thing that is consistent with these two is that they both have a 3-inch diameter collector. The other thing about this new bigger header is that I had mentioned that I measured out the entire length of these. These are on average 2 inches longer than the other as far as the tube, but also look at the difference in the collector itself. The distance from here to here is longer on the larger header than it is on the shorter one by quite a bit. So it's almost got some built-in extra collector extension length on it. That extra length right there is going to make more difference in the ultimate overall collector length than it would as far as the diameter or length of this tubing. That's a better header.
Yeah.
Well, that answers our question about whether the 1 3/4 inch header is more appropriately sized, as you would say, for this engine. What we're looking at here, by the way, is the 1 5/8 header in red and the 1 3/4 header in black. You can see the 1 5/8 was better down here below 4,500 RPM, but when we started to really move some air, obviously the 1 3/4 is a whole lot better.
It's the old myth of smaller tube diameter is better for low-end torque, right?
Yeah, in this case it did, which is interesting because it also has shorter overall length than the larger header. But I would choose the 1 3/4 inch header.
Oh, look at that top-end charge. I mean, it's clearly superior by a pretty significant amount.
Our peak power numbers now with the 1 3/4 inch header are 497.2 horsepower at 6,700 RPM. The torque is 446.7 at 5,000 RPM. And the other thing that I've noted is that the RPM at peak power hasn't really changed based on the header tube diameter.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah. So now we go put on the 30-inch collector extension on this thing. Here we go with the 30-incher. So we're gonna go 1 3/4 header versus 1 3/4 header. This is what we did with the collector extension. Same exact trend we saw with the other header. It only matters below peak torque. So of course what you're looking at here is the black line with the big collector extension, red line without, and that's just a massive gain in that bottom end torque. And I'm gonna make a prediction. I've learned not to make predictions on the show, but wait for it.
I know
That's going to get worse and worse as we cut the collector shorter.
What?
Oh,
Yeah. But I guess we got to do the same thing. Want to take 6 inches down?
Sure, absolutely. Well, Troy does.
Troy. Oh, he's going to ding your dyno. Watch. Oh, he didn't.
He knows what he's doing.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. That was awesome. That was the greatest changeover in the history of the show. All right, thanks to Troy, the Chop Goldie, we've now got 24-inch extensions. Sorry, we're going to overlay the 30-inch collector extension with this bigger header. And sure enough, the difference is less, but the longer pipe had more torque. Wait
a minute, no. It's the other way
game
around.
changer. I assumed, and you know what happens when you assume? I made a chump out of myself. The shorter collector extension made more torque at the bottom end. That is the 24-incher, and the red line is the 30-incher. The plot thickens.
You know, it's a combination of length and diameter, and we found something where it's filling the cylinder better at that engine speed is all there is.
That's all there is. That's really interesting.
The 24 is better.
We're just baffled by this because the trend we saw the whole time, even with the 30-incher that we just tested, was that the longer extension was going to make more torque below the RPM at peak torque, and that did not happen this time. We shortened it up 6 inches and made more bottom end.
Now the next 6 inches going to 18 is really going to be interesting.
Yeah.
Nobody can predict that one because it just threw us this curveball.
Do we do 2, 4? I don't want to blow past some data that we wouldn't otherwise capture.
Why not 3? We could split the...
You want to do 3?
Yeah. That way it's half our
6 and
increment.
6. That's good. Go 3, Troy. 3. Very interesting. Every test we've done this far has been 6 inches, and look at that. That's 3 inches. This low-end torque, again, the torque below the RPM at peak torque, once again, climbed with the shorter collector.
Yeah.
It made more power than the smaller header. This blue line, that's with the 30-incher. The red line's the 24, and now we're at 21.
So we just keep adding torque.
Yeah.
And the other thing we just learned is only 3 inches made a measurable difference. As a matter of fact, the blue line to the red line is 6 inches. The red line to the black line is 3 inches.
Well, the only choice now is another 3 inches.
Another 3.
Right. But you know what? We're basically trying to find the ideal tuned length by trial and error. Like if you had a
trombone, right?
A trombone, you know.
Which actually is a lesson about the pressure wave in there because it makes a different sound, longer or shorter, because the pressure wave is coming out longer or shorter. It's the same exact thing we're doing here.
There's also inertial ram where it's packing, and it can change that where it's actually filling the cylinder from the intake side more effectively because what the exhaust is doing.
Right.
First and second wave reflective.
Yeah, all of that stuff that we don't understand but that we can
Inertial
test.
ram, reflective wave, all of that. All the stuff that we can't see that we wish we could.
Wow, this just became great.
Yeah, this was fun.
It really did. So 3 more inches. Troy. This is getting really exciting because that looks like that was another big improvement in the overall average power. Look at that. We're making 498 horsepower now and 442.2 pound-feet of torque. We're going to compare our new 18-inch collector with our old 21-inch collector. Look at that.
To smooth that and fill that in.
So the gains are getting smaller, but the trend continues with this larger header that when we shorten that collector, it's picking up the torque right here. The black line is the shorter 18-inch collector, red line is the longer 21-incher. And look what's happening up here is they come together around peak torque and then diverge again afterwards. This is pretty
These
awesome.
changes are pretty significant. You know, I'd like to say that the next change is kind of like timing and it's going to do almost nothing and we know we're in the sweet spot.
That's what I feel.
Every change we're making, it's been fairly significant. So the next change again is going to be really interesting.
Well, the averages came up. Like average torque with the 21-inch tube, 417.6. Average throughout the curve with the 18, 419.7. That's 2.1, which on average is...
That's significant. And like Steve was saying, The curve is just nicer. It filled in some of that dip that we had been seeing with the longer collector extension.
Yeah, here.
Yeah, and at the top too.
So interesting.
We just got to go cut another 3 off.
So we're gonna
Yeah.
go 15 and then 12.
And that should tell us a whole bunch right there. That's
Yeah.
when the change will, I think.
We'll catch the
it'll
change
switch at the
somewhere
other
in there.
end.
Right now, it's the out of the box 18-inch length.
Yeah, and it worked good.
Yeah. Now we've got it down to 15 inches. We're trying to find that perfect length to make the COVID 350 the best it can be.
That might be the best right here.
So here, the 18-inch extension is red. The new 15-incher is black.
We're close.
We're right, and I mean,
But I think we might be coming down the other side right now.
I think so.
well, you look at the peaks, and we're actually up at peak in both cases. We're now making 442.7 pound-feet of torque at 5,000, which is up by half, and we're making 499 horsepower at 6,600 RPM, which is up by 0.4. Essentially, the performance in the car, this is the same.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
So I think we're at the point of no return. We don't really need to keep hacking this thing down unless you just want to find out where it does
I think
fall
we need to
off.
make one more cut.
Okay.
Me too, I agree.
I think one more 3-incher,
Okay.
just to see if we move down to lose some more torque and move, lose a little bit somewhere else, just to make sure we're on the other side of that window.
But nevertheless, the big story is still that the trend inverted.
Inverted, yeah,
Yeah.
which
Yeah.
has something to do with the diameter. I'm not that smart. I don't know.
So let's go hack another 3. And now we're down to 12 inches. I think this is the tipping point.
I think it is.
Here comes the graph, and we got 496.9 horsepower, 444.1 pound-feet of torque, which happens to be our highest one yet, but that's not the story as usual. The overlay will be the story. So red lines, 15-inch, black lines, 12-inch. How do you call it? 15-inch. The 15 was better. We are at the tip-over point. So now we're going to compare 12 inches versus 18 inches. Okay, black line is 12 inches, red line 18 inches. Okay, so once we hit 18, we got to the point of diminishing return on big changes, but prior to that, we definitely saw an inverted trend from length versus torque. So I've actually learned a massive amount from this, and I guess the big thing is that I didn't think that pressure wave tuning of like F1 and Pro Stock type information would matter this much to an average engine like this.
I think that always matters. I mean, I think it's physics and it's going to apply to almost any engine.
Yeah.
That's all part of the track. I mean, from the top of the choke horn there to the end of the collector, it's all part of it.
Which is the other thing I learned, because I believe if we put a tunnel ram on this, meaning a big long intake runner different than what's there, it's going to change this again.
Absolutely. And then throw
Yeah.
another camshaft in it.
It's going to change it all again. And so that's the third thing is, well, there's many things that we test that we feel we can derive a trend from and give people advice. Yeah. And I've learned you can never say always in this engine stuff, but we can see trends. In this case, the only trend that I can tell you knowing what I know right now is you have to try it on your own car.
But it just goes to show you that all of this stuff matters every time, no matter what. And this is the difference between engine development and engine testing.
Right.
Yeah. And that development, as you say, would be different with a different intake and cam. It's fascinating. Yeah. And that we were able to see this kind of difference just by changing the header tube diameter. We would normally go, oh yeah, that 1 3/4 is going to make way more power, and it did, but who would have known that we would have seen that difference in the collector?
Yeah, and if it's that sensitive to pipe length, imagine the full exhaust system in your car and how that would affect your performance or your torque down low or up high or what have you.
Yeah. Well, but I guess the last thing I learned, if you really don't know, I still think you're better off with an out-of-the-box 18-inch collector than you are with nothing at all.
You can't hardly go wrong with an 18.
Yeah.
I mean, you're at least in that zone. And I think we've seen over and over with nothing there, it just kills the bottom.
It's no good.
But if you have a 5,000 stall converter, who cares?
Yeah.
This turned out way better than I expected.
Good.
Yeah, this was
Fun
awesome.
stuff.
Any final thoughts?
10 more questions.
Right.
And no more answers.
A lot of times development is cut and try, and that's what we found out here. You just have to zero in on what actually works.
Yeah.
It's undeniable.
But the thing we tested and proved is that it makes a difference, and you need to find out if you really care about ultimate performance.
Absolutely.
Yep, which is what we kind of do every single time on
Engine Masters.
Your battery died?
Battery.
Oh yeah, I need a new battery.
Thought you were better than that, Troy.
I grabbed the battery.
Comes in here with the sawzall with the dead battery. Can you believe it? That was the header cutting scene. You know? No, I mean, I come over here. I want to get this header cut.
There we go.
Oh, hey, nice work, Troy. You got that cut in a jiffy.
Next time on Engine Masters, it is my personal quest to make 1,000 horsepower naturally aspirated. This is going to be a very different kind of episode of Engine Masters because we're going to be building a complete engine from scratch. It's going to take us a few months, and we're going to be shooting as we go so that I can show you all of the details of all of the hard parts that are going in this thing. And the other thing that makes it really special is this is about my personal quest to make 1,000 horsepower naturally aspirated. Now, I know these days you can go get an LS engine and throw a turbo on it, and you can make 1,000 horsepower and it's no big deal, but there's no challenge in that. And because I am the flip-flops and big blocks kind of guy, I decided to do it with a naturally aspirated big block Chevy. And this is surprisingly a common combination that we're gonna do here. It's not rocket science, but versus like your standard street engine that many of you are used to, there's a lot of tips and tricks and special features here that I'm gonna show you as we go through it. Now first, I'm gonna talk about what the combination is and why I chose it. This is going to be a 582 cubic inch engine. Now, the reason I went there is, you know, you can build a 598, you can build a 632, you can build a 705 if you feel like it. Really, I took the advice of my good friend Steve Brule, who is the big block master and who's seen these all over the place, and he's like, Freiberger, here's the deal. You want this thing to last, you want to run a wet sump with it instead of dry sump oiling, you do not want a 4,500 stroke in this deal. So the core of it is a 4.375 stroke crank. And the thing is, at RPM, that doesn't dip down into the oil as much. It doesn't get as much of a windage problem, and it's gonna last longer. It's also in a tall deck block, and the reason for that is basically piston ring stability. I'm gonna be able to run a 6.7 inch rod in it and still have a piston that has a 1.3 inch compression height and doesn't even have the pin up into the oil ring. So ring stability is a big part of the reason why we chose that. Now let's talk about the specific components involved, and I have to thank Race Winning Brands, who has helped me out a ton with this because, no lie, this is some very expensive stuff. Starting with this Dart all aluminum tall deck block. Now obviously the aluminum feature of it is gonna save a ton of weight off the nose, but there's a whole lot of other things that are trick about this. The bore in this thing is 4,600, and I have chosen the complete Dart package where they will prep the entire block for you and ship it ready to assemble. And so that's a huge help. It's already been decked, it's already been bored and honed, it's already been a line board. This thing is ready to go. It is beef, and I love it. I've wanted an aluminum big block forever, so I'm so happy. Now, the pistons are from Diamond. They match the 4,600 bore in this thing. Now, you'll notice They've got a very small dome on them. And I should point out, this is the one custom thing in this entire program. Everything else on the table is directly off the shelf, but I wanted maximum compression. So we're running 14.7 to 1 compression ratio with just a 23 cc dome, because the chamber in these cylinder heads that I'll tell you about soon is only 97. A standard big block is closer to 118 to 121. And so with that smaller chamber, you can get more compression with a flatter piston. I also gave Diamond the specs of the camshaft that I want to run, and so they're able to cut the reliefs in it so that it'll match perfectly and I'm not going to have a valve to piston problem. You can see that it has vertical gas ports in it, and the rings in this are 0.43 inch for the first and second, and then it's got a 3mm oil ring. One thing that you got to think about when you're building a serious engine like this that is just not really on the radar of your typical street deal is the piston pin itself. Diamond asked me if I was going to be running a power adder or naturally aspirated. I swore that I was never going to put nitrous on this thing, and that's probably a lie. And so they were able to step me up to a beefier piston pin. My crank and my connecting rod both came from K1 Technologies. These are probably the most basic parts that you'll find in this engine. A 6.7 inch H-beam connecting rod, and the crankshaft is of course forged, and it's a 4.375 stroke. I've got no other real trickery in this as far as like special shaped counterweights or dual keyways or anything like that. We get into the beef of what I am counting on for the horsepower here, which is the Dart cylinder head. Now this thing is like a compromise in between a full race head, like their Big Chief stuff or like Spreadport stuff. It has a altered valve angle. It's 20 degrees on the intake instead of 25, which is stock, or 24, which is common in the aftermarket, but it still takes a conventional big block Chevy intake manifold. So that pattern is identical, but the intake ports are 451 cc's. So this thing's gonna flow big. And we were just lusting after the exhaust port over here, which is gnarly looking. The valves are titanium on the intake and Inconel on the exhaust. A little bit of overkill for what I'm doing, but it's gonna help me RPM. It is a 2.400 intake valve and a 1.800 exhaust. And once again, that 97 cc nice flat chamber for high compression. So that's the bones of what I'm starting with here. And now we're gonna run off and have to assemble the short block. And when I come back and give you the next update, I hope we can talk more specifically about the valve train that's gonna be going in my 582. Now it's 3 months and 1 pandemic later. What I'm gonna show you now is some of the specialized components that are gonna go on the outside of the engine that are a little bit different than your conventional big block Chevy. I'm gonna kick it off with the oiling system. If you saw episode 56 of Engine Masters, you know that we made big horsepower and improved our oil pressure curve with a very trick Moroso oil pan, and that's why these guys are our new best friends for oiling. This pan's actually a little bit different than the one that we used before because it's not two-piece, it's a little bit cheaper. I thought I would end up using a flat dragster pan, but these guys advised that the sumped pan like this actually helps oil control and deceleration. And so this is more of a conventional chassis car type pan. However, there are some differences. First of all, this windage tray is a little more unique than what you might see in a standard street pan, mostly because it's got these dividers in it. This divides the pairs of connecting rods on the throws on the crankshaft. Cylinders 1 and 2, 3 and 4, 5 and 6, 7 and 8. By separating them like this, you get even more oil control. On the oil pump, Moroso makes a bunch of very cool billet pumps. This is not like a regular cast housing that you would see on one of our normal performance buildups. Now, to be honest with you, I don't fully understand what they've got going on in here. I asked them about the oil pumps because they make like 6 or 7 different part numbers on them, and they looked at what I was going to do as far as clearances on the mains and rods and bearing diameters and RPM, and they picked a specific oil pump for me. I guess my best advice would be, if you're doing something radical like this, call them and get the advice on which pump to use, because there's a bunch of them. Next up, before we get into some hard parts, this is the head gasket that I'm going to use. This has become pretty typical for a really high performance buildup with a lot of compression or a lot of boost or nitrous. It is what they call an MLS gasket, or multi-layer steel. You can see that there is a solid shim here in the middle, and then there's 2 outer ones that are stamped with the embossments, and then it's all coated with a sealant. Now, the point of this type of gasket is that it's got some springiness to it. Especially in a boost or nitrous application, you can see that the cylinder head really wants to lift off the block and sometimes warp a little bit. And you'll see what we used to call torching the block, which is the head lifts, and often you'll see that the fire from combustion will just go right out the side, and especially on an aluminum block like this, it will just dig a groove. It's like you took, a plasma cutter and just put a big groove in the block. Obviously, I don't want that. And the Cometic MLS gasket is designed to solve that. Now we get into the hard parts, the valve train parts. And this is all a CompCams program. They are looking at making a package for engines like this. I've mentioned to you before that this is not rocket science what I'm doing here. This is a pretty standard engine package that a lot of bracket racers use. So while it's full race, they're also looking for reliability and durability. And so we've taken a bunch of steps toward that. First of all is in the cam profile itself, which at this point is a custom grind from Comp that eventually you should be able to buy off the shelf. It's aggressive. I'm going to talk to you about the duration at 50 thousandths tappet lift, and it's going to sound to you like advertised duration. It is 284 on the intake and 300 on the exhaust. That is a no fooling solid roller camshaft. The lift is above 850 on both lobes, and the lobe separation angle is 114. Other things for durability, the camshaft in this thing is what they call a 55mm cam, meaning that the cam bearing bores in the block are actually larger than a conventional big block Chevy. Sometimes you can do that with actually a needle roller bearing. I've done it with a Babbitt bearing. The whole point is to make the camshaft core a larger diameter so that it does not flex with the high valve spring pressures that we're going to use. It's just an element of beef. The other thing is, the solid roller lifters in this engine are a larger diameter than a conventional big block Chevy. A stock big block Chevy is 843 thousandths round in the bore inside the engine block. These are the Chrysler diameter of 0.904, 904 thousandths of an inch. And so the body of the lifter is physically bigger and the roller wheel is physically bigger, which gives you a number of benefits, a larger axle, but in particular, a different ramp on the camshaft lobes. So again, this is another thing that we told CompCams what we were doing, and it's another element of the package that they're going to be putting together for these engines. And of course, the Dart block had to be custom ordered, bushed for those larger lifter diameters. Now, on a conventional big or small block Chevy or a number of other engines, they have what we call a stud-mounted rocker, this being that stud, which screws into the cylinder head right next to the valve spring and valve. And with that stud, the rocker arm slips over it. And often we will use with this what's called a stud girdle, which is a big piece of aluminum that ties together all of the rocker arm studs on one bank of the engine. The problem is we're dealing with big valves, high valve spring pressures, lots of RPM, and the stud-mounted rocker can still flex around quite a bit in that scenario. So instead, we're going to be using what's called shaft rockers. These happen to be from a company called T&D, which is sold through CompCams, and maybe one day will be part of this package that we're discussing. You can see that with the shaft-mounted rocker, there is a large aluminum brace right here that's going to bolt into the stock stud mounts, and then each rocker is going to mount individually onto that brace. It's called a shaft rocker because you can see it has a shaft running through the middle of it, which is like the axle. And then the rocker arm pivots on that axle. And by doing that, it just removes any flex side to side or up and down that's going to cause deflection, that's going to be a reliability problem, and also reduce lift and duration and things like that. Mostly it's a reliability issue. As far as valve springs, Comp has developed a new spring that is really for longevity. If you've got this thing in like a typical bracket race application, you might be changing valve springs like every 100 passes or something like that. They wanted to go closer to like 400 passes. If you look at the springs that are currently on my Dart heads, you'll see that they're a big, heavy triple spring. This one is only a double, but it's all nicely scienced out and finished to be able to control this massive camshaft and have more reliability. And since, honestly, I'm never going to rebuild this thing once it goes in a car, I need something like that. The other thing that is a little bit different from what you'd normally see on race engines is that it's got these lightweight tool steel valve spring retainers. What you've got here is titanium, which is pretty typical. Titanium is lighter than steel, so it helps with, overall weight and valve control. The tool steel is nearly as light as titanium, but it's not going to have the wear problems that you can often see with titanium, so that's what we're going to be running there. The other huge question that I get on social media every time I show pictures of this engine is what is going on with the belt drive on the front of the engine? This is a very nice Comp Cams camshaft belt drive. It would serve the same purpose as your typical timing chain set, and often you would upgrade with a double roller, and people have asked me why I didn't use that. There's a whole bunch of reasons. First of all, in something as radical as this with a huge stroke and a lot of displacement, a lot of RPM, a lot of valve spring pressure, they use the belt instead of a chain to reduce the number of harmonics that are transferred from the crankshaft into the cam. How can I actually data log that? I don't know, but it's been common practice for a long, long time. Also, this setup is said to not eat as much power, and it is more reliable than a chain. I have broken timing chains, even double rollers. I have never broken one of these heavy-duty belts. When you install this thing, it has a very trick setup for setting the camshaft end play, but the bigger reason why this is used in race applications is right here, you can go in and loosen up these bolts and you can adjust your camshaft timing. You've seen episodes about how that can affect the power curve. Well, with this, you can be at the track and you can just go in there and move it a couple degrees one way or the other and alter that shape of your power curve. That, and it looks so trick. So anyway, that's the next level of parts we've got going on the 582. Next time you see it, it'll be a long block. And finally, it is all together in one piece, and there's some more trickery to show you. So the 582 is now loaded with a Moroso vacuum pump, which you can see here. You can buy from Moroso all sorts of different versions of this. They can advise you on what's best, including the drive unit. What this does is it works almost like an old school smog pump. There's vanes inside it, so that when it spins, it creates a vacuum. And you can see we've got it plumbed to the valve cover here. So the whole crankcase inside the engine is going to end up pulling about 8 inches of vacuum, and that tends to help piston ring seal, and it also helps with oil control. Now, looking at some of the other accessories here on the top, we've got a 1050 CFM Holley Dominator carburetor. This one is an XP model with really cool features, including the fact that it's aluminum, which has merit. It's significantly lighter than the old zinc models. Now, the other thing I want to point out is that this is not some boutique frou-frou custom tuner magic guy carburetor. That is Holley straight out of the box. Next, we've got this 1-inch carburetor spacer here, which we're going to test in the episode. We'll show you all about that. The intake manifold is an Edelbrock Super Victor 2 for a tall deck big block like this one. I really want to point out, this manifold is not touched as far as custom porting. It is right out of the box. So now, it all comes down to the moment of truth for me. We're gonna put it on the dyno. We're gonna show you how Brule sort of warms up into tuning and getting the final number for an engine like this. And I'm gonna cross my fingers that it makes more than 1,000 horsepower naturally aspirated. Well, guys, there's a lot of ways to make 1,000 horsepower these days, but I know that you love NA power.
Absolutely.
And big block Chevys.
Oh, my favorite.
He loves big block Chevys, and I want to see your excitement level Freiburger.
I have been waiting for this for a long time. I am super stoked about it. So I have to reveal that Brule is the one who talked me into the single 4-barrel.
Really?
I wanted the tunnel ram. He's like, oh no, it'd be really cool to make the number with a single 4-barrel. So.
Well, because it was going to be too easy with a tunnel ram.
So if it doesn't make it, I'm blaming you.
Okay, I'll accept that.
Oh, wow.
Well, you saw that coming. Why else do you think I would have set that up?
I know, you just really like, phew,
So it's
right
all
on Brule.
Right there.
My engine, my responsibility, I suppose.
Wait, what?
He's really trying to swallow your 582.
Yeah.
What's happening here?
So the goal is 1,000 horsepower here, and Steve ran it enough to make sure it wasn't going to kick a rod. And so we still have timing adjustments, jetting adjustments, and after that I would like to fiddle around with cam timing, carb spacer, whatever it takes. All right, we'll fire it up. Okay. We'll sit out here anxiously.
I can't wait to see it.
All right, I'm all anxious. This is gonna be our initial baseline to find out what kind of power this thing makes.
Anxiety?
Well, yeah.
Power anxiety or blow-up anxiety?
Oh, power anxiety. I'm not worried about blow-up anxiety. After all this drama, it better make the number by the end of the episode. Yeah, so we're looking at 11.3 to 11.5 to 1 air-fuel ratio. It made 977.6 horsepower at 7,000 RPM, so off my goal there. And we ran the thing through peak torque, which the torque curve is like dead flat. Basically 775 to 3.
Yeah.
We won't know until we run it all the way through a full sweep.
Yeah.
Exactly.
What I would do next is put timing in it because the air-fuel ratio is still very safe. So we can see if it responds to the timing,
right.
And then we'll look at the carburetor and make some choices there.
And it's my responsibility to set timing because it's my motor. So if it slips to like 42 degrees and the pistons leave the building, then it becomes my fault. So red lines are 32 degrees of timing, black lines are 36 degrees. Does it make you want to put 2 more in it?
I'm hesitant just knowing this cylinder head and combustion chamber, but we've got good gas in it.
Yeah.
So we can go another 2, and I don't think it's going to show much, but then we know, and we can go back.
For the record, right now, 987 horsepower. We think the timing helped, so I'm going to go tickle 2 degrees into that thing, and we'll see if it does better. Degrees of ignition timing, at least by my eyeball, says 991.6 horsepowers and 773 pound-feet of torque. We got to overlay it to make sure that it's like everything that we hope it is.
Well, I am reasonably comfortable saying.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Picked up 6.
Wow. Yeah, it was a good jump.
And it did that twice in a row.
Exactly.
So it tells me it's maybe not done.
Got to go there. I mean, 40 degrees of timing would be really hard to believe with something with such a flat chamber and not much of a dome on it. Should be pretty efficient, but we don't know where that timing pointer's lined up.
I will tell you what I would normally do.
Okay.
Is I would not do more timing now. Because when we go do some air-fuel ratio stuff and get it close, the timing might change at 2 or 3 tenths. I would head for air-fuel ratio, get that kind of dialed in, whether it be spacer, jetting, whatever happens there, and then try another degree or so when we're done with some air-fuel. Take the wholesale changes or the biggest changes first, and then just barely pick out.
Well, you're a dyno brain, I'm with that.
So, okay.
Yeah, so let's look at the fuel curve and decide what to do there. So the dyno has 2 feed lines for fuel, one of them to the front bowl, one of them to the second bowl, and they both have fuel veins in it. So what Steve's doing is looking at the fuel flow front and rear and deciding where he's going to make his change. And you're seeing that you've got more fuel in the rear right now than in the front, and because we want to lean it out a bit, he's going to take some jetting out of the back, and it should even out the 2 bowls. So before you say it, let Dulcich and I guess how many jets you're going to go. We don't know what's in it right now, but I'm going to guess that you're going to want to take out 4.
I was going to say 4, but I'm going to go with 5.
5
and a half.
5 and a half. All right, we're going to go jet this thing. So Brule has this set that I like to call the barbecue set because that wood handle looks to me like when you get the Weber grill and it comes with the like poker and stuff. And it's the special step on it right there so that it works on this style of jet extension that actually tucks in behind the jet. See, the jet extension is so that when you're on the drag strip and you launch and all the fuel goes to the back of the bowl, it's still picking up fuel. There's 2 kinds. There's a kind that threads into the hole and then the jet threads into that, and this kind where the jet just falls out like that. This jet is, ooh, that's a 94. Interesting. I was worried that it was going to be like a 96 or a 98. Usually when you have a really big jet, like let's say a 98 in it, you have to make a bigger change because when they approach 100, the changes get less and less sensitive. In other words, if it's 100 to begin with, you might have to change 6 to make it change. But with a 94 in it, we can change 4 and make it change. What was the calling from Brule?
89.
89, so he's going to move 5.
Yeah.
4 digits.
Yeah.
That was 1,000 plus.
Yeah. Oh,
That was the one.
whew. I saw those numbers just flying up, like counting
me
up.
too.
That was beautiful.
That was a big jump in power for that jetting change, actually.
Yeah, sometimes you might be surprised.
We were high-fiving each other out here, but I got to see the data, because if we're wrong, I can't tell you what the collapse in my mood will be if it made 999 on the data.
I am 100% confident we're not going to ruin your mood.
Okay,
Okay.
good. Yes, we got it. 1,005.9 horsepower, pretty much with out-of-the-box parts on gasoline and a single 4-barrel.
Isn't that amazing?
Yes.
That's why this was so much fun.
Yeah, and it's going to get better from here, I hope.
Yeah.
There's our curve, 782.1 pound-feet of torque, 1,005.9 horsepower. Look how flat this torque curve is, which is why it makes the power, because the roll-off is not as steep as you would see with something with a worse cylinder head.
You know, we've talked about this percentage thing a number of times. I wanted to show Steve Dulcich kind of what
Okay.
happened. 781, so we'll say what, 78 horsepower would be a 10% drop?
723.
So it's 60.
Wow. So 60,
So it's
which is
8%.
less than it. Yeah, it's 8%
Yeah.
roughly.
And that's not even with the tricks.
Yeah, and what Steve's talking about here is how much of the torque do you lose from peak torque to peak horsepower, and putting that in percentage terms. Normally with most engines, you'll see 88 to 91%. 91 being a really good engine because it's not dropping off torque that fast. But on this particular engine, we're seeing something in the area of what, 6 or 7% drop off between those two numbers. So
Yeah.
that is an engine that hangs on and continues making power upstairs.
Can we actually look at the change that made on the graph
Absolutely.
of fuel to fuel? Oh, look at that. That is just a jetting change. That's 5 jet sizes in the secondary.
Holy cow.
Holy cow.
Yeah.
Yeah, from 991 to 1,006. I had said to him, he's like, you know, this is going to pick up to 1Z, 2Zs, 3Zs. It's not going to actually hit 4 digits. Wrong.
Some engines are really sensitive to jetting and timing, and other ones just go, I don't care. This one obviously is sensitive to change.
Well, how rich is it? Let's look at what your sensor
where we
actually
are.
tells us. That was a huge change. It's still running 11.9 to 12.0, which normally I think on this we would call good, but what if it actually wants a little less than that?
Yeah.
So intuition is leading us towards not jetting it again, but installing a 1-inch tapered combo carburetor spacer. I'll show you what that's all about. Here's the plan, a 1-inch spacer, we call this a tapered combo. You can see that it is a 4-hole on top, but flip it over and it tapers down to open. So it's got more plenum area. Theoretically, it gives a better drivability, more signal to the booster. We don't know. We're just hoping it makes more power. Charlie Sheen?
Winning!
Let's see by how much. And with the spacer, our new power peak is 1,014.7 horsepower, and we picked up a little bit of torque, 786.
Yeah.
Yeah. Can we look at the overlay and find out how much that spacer actually helped and why? We should look at the AFR as well. Wow. Okay, we're gonna name this engine Mikey. Because Mikey likes it. No matter what you do to it, Mikey likes it.
Yeah, I'm amazed at how responsive this thing is to changes.
The red lines here before the spacer, black lines are after, and our reaction is the fact that it picked up everywhere instead of just at the top, and that it's that big of a gain.
Well, I don't know that it changed the AFR that much, and kind of part of the initial thinking was...
It didn't.
Yeah.
Typically the open leans it out,
Yeah.
which I explained to the audience. This time it just didn't. Maybe it's because of that tapered combo design. We don't know, but look at that. Ignore that because that's really not a big change. I mean, that's 0.2 of a ratio right there, which tells you the air-fuel ratio is the same.
This is at a point where I would try the timing again. Since the fuel made a significant difference, go back to 2 degrees.
Man, this is fun just whittling away at the thing. I mean, we're down into just looking at 5, 6, 7 horsepower, but still. I'm gonna go put 2 degrees in this thing.
Whoa.
It didn't hate it.
Whoa.
I'll tell you that. What just happened, Steve?
It made more power, Dave.
Yes, it did. So let's look at the curve, because it liked it again. Wow, 1,020.3 horsepower, 788 pound-feet of torque. We cannot hurt this thing. Let's have a look at what it was before the timing, 38 degrees. Boom.
Ooh.
Yeah, it just keeps growing. It's not even really narrowing. It's happening later, but the gap is not narrowing.
That's pure timing.
So right now, we're looking at 1,020.3 horsepower, which is really cool. But you had one last trick up your sleeve.
Actually, VP makes a couple of different oxygenated fuels, and we have used Q16 here on a number of occasions. It's really more prominent in the drag boat racing community than it is in NHRA. It's a little more expensive, and you have to service the engine, maybe drain it between races, that sort of thing. For whatever reason, drag boat guys are willing to. But what I can tell you is what we normally see is normally 2% gain.
So we're gonna go pour in the Q16, or they are while I'm waiting here.
Okay.
Whoa, 1,038.9 horsepower, 797 pound-feet of torque, almost 800.
Yeah.
What a sweet curve this thing makes, too.
Yeah.
Let's overlay it with the gasoline.
Whoa.
Whoa.
Man, that's a lot.
That's huge. And it's everywhere in the curve, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. Ooh, and look at that, 7,700 RPM. It definitely rolled over there. It's making peak at 74 right now when you actually carry it all the way out.
Yeah.
But man, that's a shrieking big block.
Yes,
Kind of fun, huh?
Yeah, that's totally cool. Am I allowed to call it 1,040?
I'll give you that one. Yeah,
Am I
it's
allowed?
within 1 horsepower.
All right, we have 1,040 horsepower big block.
You know, I'd call it 1,040.
I know you would. It's only 1.1 horsepower away from that. Here's the thing that I've really thought through as I've sort of been through the process of this engine over the past many months is there's a lot of ways to get 1,000 horsepower these days. There's fewer ways to make 1,000 horsepower naturally aspirated. And I think what I've honed in on here is this is the easiest. I've seen 400 cubic inch Clevelands make 1,000 horsepower NA. If you're willing to spend a fortune on oiling, induction, cylinder heads, and 12,000 RPM, you can do it. But this ultimately is not a custom engine. Everything on it is off the shelf. It bolts together a little bit more difficult than a regular engine, but not much.
Yeah, you've got to do some more checking and measuring, valve to piston clearance, those things, just to ensure that you don't have any issues. But realistically, we never left this shop assembling it.
Right.
Right.
There's no super custom milling. There's no trick porting work.
No.
The heads are right out of the box. That intake is right out of the box. Carburetor. The only thing I recall doing that was super annoying was I had to grind the back of the belt drive cover. But you got to do that every single time you use a belt drive.
Yeah, I mean, unless you're just lucky.
So there's nothing custom on it. This is all off-the-shelf aftermarket parts. And what makes it easy is the 582 cubic inches and the fact that it's the bigger bore and the shorter stroke. Yeah. Some 582s are like a 4.560 bore and a 4.5-inch stroke, and this has only got a 4.375 stroke, which I think helps with the RPM and the oiling.
The oiling issue is the reason I like the shorter strokes. The big strokes in a wet sump get to be kind of problematic.
Yeah.
That's why I love this thing.
Well, if you want big power, the big block Chevy is just the go-to power plant, in my opinion, every time. So, I mean, this just proves it. NA, 1,000+ horsepower, bolt-together combo.
Yep.
Nice
Dart,
job.
K1, Comp Cams, Holly, Moroso, they all make it happen. I don't know if you'll see 1,000 horsepower NA again anytime soon, but if we do it, you will see it on Engine Masters.
Oh. I think it liked it. I know. I just can't contain myself, though, Freiberger.
I know.
You know, honestly, when I'm watching the numbers roll on the Dyno screen as we're going through a poll, I'm like, go, go, go.
I know.
Do you do the same thing?
Yeah, and every time I see a number flash, I'm like, oh, it did blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And then we look at the curve, I'm like, oh.
Hello, xin chào tất cả các bạn. Là mình ra những video hay cho các bạn xem. Các bạn ơi, các bạn theo thì hãy like và một chút kênh của mình thì hay nha. Cảm ơn các bạn đã theo dõi kênh của mình. Thank you các bạn rất nhiều nha. Ok luôn các bạn à. Kinh. Đấy, mở ra trăm bằng nghìn con xe ngập nhỉ. Cam kết không đâm đụng, không ngập nước.
Duy nhất tại hai nhá, các chị ơi không cần quan tâm đến giá. Hôm nay đầu tiên này em sẽ tặng luôn cho các chị yêu nhà mình phần quà. Mua một túi tặng một phiên bản ví nha các chị yêu nha. Ví trị giá 330.000 đồng giúp em. Đó, các bác thấy không ạ? Ví này mọi người có thể đựng thẻ, đựng căn cước, đựng gọi như là mô và những vật dụng nhỏ đi du lịch, đúng không ạ? Rất là tiện lợi cho em đi chơi đi làm các bác nhá. Chưa kể là gì ạ? Em còn tặng luôn cho mọi người thêm một phiên bản hộp để mọi người muốn tặng quà cho người thương, người thân hay là những anh trai này.
Mấy vừa đặt không á? Xe mấy vừa đặt không nè? Đặt vừa cao cao đó. Nước lên rồi. Đến từng con hả? Đây bỏ nè. Trời ơi. Mấy vừa đặt không á? Xe
to các bạn, con măng xanh thì trong đây có con kiến thì tối mình không có đậy nắp ở đây các bạn. Đó.
Chạy rồi một chạy chạy hướng này luôn, nãy thấy đây chạy rồi kỹ vô mấy cái vườn này nè, anh đứng đặt đây nè, đây nè. Đấy.
Xin chào các bạn, mình tí quay tiếp nữa. Hello, xin chào tất cả các bạn nha, lại là mình đây. Lại ra những video hay cho các bạn xem. Các bạn ơi, các bạn thứ hai thì hãy like và comment chút kênh của mình thứ hai nha. Cảm ơn các bạn đã theo dõi video của mình. Thank you các bạn rất nhiều nha. Ok là
chào ông già đứa ấy nhỉ. Trước anh lại mở cho tất cả like để xong Cần Thơ xem. Ô ông mất này.
nghe trôi chảy luôn thật.
Anh lại bảo ông mất thế up lên còn vui như này.
Up lúc đấy là ông chưa mất.
Nó đã up 2 tiếng trước.
Hả?
2 tiếng trước lúc 6 giờ.
6 giờ thì em phải hiểu. Video anh quay lâu rồi. Anh quay trước lúc đấy rồi. Anh quay mấy tập rồi. Nói xem xong lại cái video đó của anh lại thấy buồn cười. Chào gớm thật. Các bạn nghe chỉ có mướt máy ấy.
Nghe trôi nhỉ.
Đâu cái show nào ngon thì úp cái kênh mới mà.
Nó show ô tô ấy.
Show ô tô đang úp cái kênh này.
Tự cái dừng rồi.
Chưa, vẫn úp nó không lên review mấy nữa rồi.
Người thắc mắc vì sao máy tính vừa mua trước khi bật đã bị cảnh báo chết hồn. Thực ra đây không phải sửa chữa mà là cách nâng cấp bản bản hóa nhanh và rẻ nhất. Ở Mazuka,
Chả nhẽ lại úp cái kênh, úp cái show ấy. Show cổ nhỉ. Cổ thì đâu được gắn bao nhiêu view. À, kênh này của anh hết gậy rồi. Mà có kênh tiếp. cái tập phải làm cái show ấy, The Pot in út này, anh út một tập lên 60k view. Ừ. Sáu mươi k view tập. Đã. Kéo gì?
Ngủ bên giường.
Show này đang ngon. Quả cổ này. Được, có 3 xe xịn.
Thích cái khỏe.
Kênh trắng.
Ừ.
Kênh trắng.
Ý là kênh mới của anh mà.
Kênh mới của anh thì nó view của nó bình thường, nhưng mà có mỗi mình anh làm thì nó căng. View của nó hiu cũng được, thuộc dạng cũng thuộc dạng tạp dạng. Nhưng tiền nó tháng cao nhất của nó là được 30 đô, nó không có tháng nào nó vượt trội. Ngon đấy. Ít của mẹ ít dở, đang quay một tiếng tí mình quay tiếp này.